introducing you, Dr. That are happening on the borders between Lebanon and Palestine, where the Israeli soldiers, of course, are having some or are facing some frictions with, of course, the Lebanese citizens and the Lebanese resistance. We're talking about a huge army, one of the best armies in the region in the Middle East, facing a small tent that was built by individuals in an occupied area. How can you describe this scene, Doctor?
Well, history teaches us that no matter how powerful a country or an empire is, eventually that country or empire will no longer be able to suppress a people who have had their freedom, who have had their identity, who have had their cultural and spiritual values suppressed for decades and in some cases for centuries. So that is why we are seeing a shift in the dynamics in West Asia at present, where Israel, whilst remaining tremendously powerful, is witnessing its own power declining. We are seeing Palestinian resolve increasing as each day, week, month and year passes. And we are also seeing the resistance in Lebanon against Israeli aggression increase dramatically. So I am not surprised by what is currently taking place, because as I said moments ago, if you are aware of history, you will know that people eventually regain, or in some cases gain, their freedom. People cannot be suppressed indefinitely.
Since you have mentioned history, Doctor, oppressors and occupiers always think the same. In all the regions, all the occupied regions all around the world throughout history, Israel is similar to every occupied, of course, power. Those occupying powers think that they will remain powerful forever. They think they will remain oppressing the people and the countries that they are occupying, and they think that this will last forever. But throughout the history and during each historical phase, those occupiers discover that all of their of course, efforts are useless, and that people at the end of the day gain their freedom back. How can we describe this colonial approach that is still ongoing throughout history, despite the fact that the results are the same?
Well, firstly, Israel, of course, is not an empire. Israel is part of the network of the American Empire, or the Yankee Empire, or the Anglo-American Empire, however you wish to describe the West's hold over much of the world. After all, what would Israel be if it did not have the political, economic and military support of the United States of America? In short, Israel would be a severely weakened and a severely vulnerable country. But I think in answer to your question, what we can learn is this: empires can emerge, and they can emerge in a very strong manner. But after a long period of time, the rulers of these empires can become extremely complacent. They can start to believe their own propaganda. They become detached from reality. And therein lies their eventual demise, because no matter how powerful an empire is, if it continues to suppress the will and the freedom of people, if it continues to kill people, including women and children, then eventually this empire will have dug its own grave. And in regard to the American Empire or the Western Empire, we see clear evidence of what I have just said. Their hubris, their deceit, after all, they are not just, the Western ruling elites are not just liars, they are pathological liars. They are lying to people all around the world, including people in their own countries. They are telling people in the world that all is good, that people are living well, that people have freedom, that people have equality. Well, of course, anyone with even a sense, an ounce of reality about the world will tell you that the Western Empire is one of the most criminal, one of the most murderous, one of the most sadistic, one of the most violent in human history. It has caused the deaths of tens of millions of people across the world. But fortunately, we now see very encouraging developments, not just in the Middle East, but in other parts of the world, which indicate that slowly but surely the incumbent global order, which was established by the West following the demise of Soviet communism in Eastern Europe and the dissolution of the Soviet Union, is being slowly dismantled. And this dismantlement is manifesting itself by countries no longer using the dollar when they trade with one another, by countries which are firmly in the West's empire, such as Saudi Arabia, starting to pursue a more independent foreign policy. And the best example of that is Saudi Arabia's rapprochement with Iran, which only a year ago would have been unthinkable. Also, there are many countries around the world that are starting to trade with one another, countries before which would have been fearful of doing so because of the political and economic presence of the Americans in their country.
So, sorry to interrupt you. This link that you have done is quite interesting, and you have linked the Israeli occupation on one hand and this Western network, this Western system on the other hand, this Atlantic West network. It is a very interesting link, and it is true to say that there are huge ties between this violent Israeli occupation here in the Middle East on one hand, and of course the American and the Western policies on the other hand. But since you have talked about transformations that are occurring on the international level, and since of course we are seeing a decrease of American hegemony on the international level and also in West Asia, is this the explanation or the justification to the decrease of power of Israel? Is this the justification that, or is this the evidence that proves that Israel is not now capable of defending itself, despite the fact that it was a very powerful country? Are those international transformation, are those changes on the level of the American hegemony influencing the Israeli position and influencing the Israeli performance in the region?
Naturally, the American Empire is the principal patron of Israel. And so it follows that if the American Empire starts to become weakened, then inevitably its various allies and friends and vassal states across the world will also become weakened. And I think that helps to explain to a very large extent why the Israeli ruling elite are starting to become somewhat anxious. They are starting to feel not so supreme anymore in West Asia, because they are acutely aware that as a result of the Russian military campaign in Ukraine, the Western global order is slowly, starting to be dismantled by an array of countries in the world, which includes the powerful and the less powerful. So what does that mean for Israel? Well, for the time being, Israel is protected because American supremacy in West Asia remains intact. But going forward, it is very difficult to see how the hold that the Americans have over West Asia will remain as it is at present. American influence and power is on the decline in all four corners of the world. And given that the American Empire sends vast amounts of money, vast amounts of economic aid and military support, not just to Israel, but to other American allies in the Middle East, it is difficult to see how the American Empire will continue to maintain that. At the same time, what we are seeing, again, because of the Russian military campaign in Ukraine, we are seeing the beginning of the end of the relationship between Israel and Russia, because the Israelis have acted rather duplicitously in regard to its stance on the war in Ukraine. And as a result of that, the Kremlin is now starting to take steps to distance itself from Israel. And by doing so, they are solidifying their relationships with numerous countries and organizations in the Middle East, such as Iran and also Hezbollah. So whereas before Israel could say it had a wonderful relationship with one superpower, America, and also a good practical relationship with the other superpower, Russia, Israel can no longer say that. Israel is going to lose its relationship with Russia. Combined with how American influence in the world is on the decline, that plays a very great explanation in why Israel is starting to feel, as I said moments ago, nervous.
Thank you so much, Dr. Papadopoulos, the host, is thanking you for your contribution and introducing you once again. Thank you, sir.